cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Welcome to the makings of a madman. Mad men get shit done, it's a passion. Has-beens can't get close to my lab, man. Since I stopped feeding these suckers, they fast. And this is the reason that I move so fast, man. Rewrote the story and threw out the cast. Fuck all the credit, man, I want the cash. I am the running man, you in the past. Too far ahead of you, you cannot see me. I'm stronger and better, you slept on your Wheaties. I got it together, you fall into pieces. I should be calling you Reese's. It should be illegal to teach this, but somebody dared me to do it. So I said, well, damn, I'ma do it. That somebody was me, man.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Welcome to the makings of a madman. Mad men get shit done, it's a passion. Has-beens can't get close to my lab, man. Since I stopped feeding these suckers, they fast. And this is the reason that I move so fast. Rewrote the story and threw out the cast. Fuck all the credit, man, I want the cash. I am the running man, you in the past. Too far ahead of you, you cannot see me. I'm stronger and better, you slept on your Wheaties. I got it together, you fall into pieces. I should be calling you Reese's. It should be illegal to teach this, but somebody dared me to do it. So I said, well, damn, I'ma do it. That somebody was me, man.
What's up, beautiful people? Happy Wednesday. It is 12:01 Central Standard Time where I am. What time is it where you are? How are you doing today? Remember, as you're coming in, please say hello to somebody and let us know where you're watching from. You could be watching with your neighbor. My voice sounds deeper today than it normally does. I'm down in the lower register, man. I'm down in the low register today. I think today is going to be a really fun conversation. I'm going to give you the backstory on how this conversation came. It's nothing controversial. It's just a long story, but a short story, but it's a good story. And so we're going to get into that in a few. I just want to give everybody a little bit of time to get in. I had an incredible conversation last night, and I'll be doing another one tomorrow. I should have put both of these in here. But last night I had H.G. Roberts on the channel. I don't know how many of y'all got to see that, but it was like incredible conversation. 12:02, welcome in the building. Just an incredible conversation last night. I think we were on almost at 2 hours, or a little bit over 2 hours. We had a little bit of technical difficulties at one point, but the conversation just flowed so well. There was so much out of it. If you've ever been interested in understanding a little bit more about religious trauma, and if you just want to hear just a very interesting story, HG was very open, very transparent with his life and what his deconstruction journey looked like and what kind of led to his deconversion. And then he's a person that's still living, like he's presenting. He's a content creator with a pseudonym because in his everyday life he is still seen as a believer by most people as of now. And so, oh my goodness, it was good conversation. So if you haven't had an opportunity to go check it out, I encourage you to do so. Oh man, it's really good to have you in here. It's really good to have you in here. We're going to be really casual today. We're going to talk about something that's kind of heavy, but I'm going to make it not as heavy as possible, right? I want to lighten the load here because we're talking about biases. And normally when you talk about biases, it's like real heavy. It's like HR heavy. We got to get HR involved when we're talking about biases. And I want to give us a maybe a different frame of reference to consider how biases work, right? And so we're going to jump into that in just a few. But I want to share, just to kind of set the mood. We'll do a little icebreaker here. Because like I'll be back sitting in the studio trying to get this stuff together. In the studio, I don't mean nothing fancy. It's just like the virtual studio. So I'll be sitting in the back, but I can just see myself. And for whatever reason, do y'all remember Willy Wonka? The one with Gene. Oh, why can't I get the name right? I can't get the name. It's there, but somebody knows the name. Somebody knows the name. Somebody's gonna say it. But it was the Willy Wonka. And the song from it was like, come with me. And so like I'm here and I'm gonna try to do this because I'm in my lower register. I'm gonna try to do this. I hope I can do it the way I did it in the pregame. In the pre-show, like, oh my goodness, it was lit in the pre-show, and I wish y'all could have saw it. Like, dang it, I wish it could have been recorded because, bruh, I was lit for a moment just singing this song because thank you, Gene Wilder. Thank you so much, Jude. Yes, Jude to the rescue. Oh, I am relieved. I didn't want to move on until we got that name right. Like I got introduced to Gene Wilder through Richard Pryor. And so like, man, I love Gene Wilder. But like, him singing that, come, I can't do it. Come with me and you'll be. I can't go up that. In a world of pure imagination. But my version be like, soon you'll see. I don't know the words to this. I can't hit that note. That's all the way up there. But the word is song. But I'm going to stop. Man, the dreamers of the dreams. I love it. But yeah, okay, so let's jump into this. Today we're going to talk about biases. And I want to tell you how this conversation came up. I've been fascinated with the way we learn as humans ever since I deconstructed. And that was like a very personal fascination for me. It wasn't, I don't want anybody to think, has it really? Oh my goodness. It's one of my favorite, man. Like, I think somebody needs to put it in a horror movie. Like, I think that would just be the most cool, haunting thing to hear, like right before somebody's getting ready to get you. It's like, come, can I do it low? Come with me and you'll be, that's too low. But like, and they're like, oh snap. And then maybe have like the old radio music playing behind it, like I don't know. I don't know how to make the old radio music sound. What's going on, Monica? And so, okay, so I this conversation come up because ever since I deconverted, I've been fascinated the way people learn, and it started off like on a very human level. Like it wasn't. I don't want y'all to think it was something deep. Like I was outside, on a patio with a pipe in my hand, saying, I wonder how our species learns. Like it wasn't that. It started like with me, just was thinking like, dude, you went through grade school, you graduated top of your class, you got your undergraduate degree. Like, what has all of that learning done for you? And like because remember, my big moment was just like, oh, I believe bullshit. That was the thing that kind of like, yeah, I got to do some re-inspecting on how I do stuff. And so like around that same time, I'm asking myself stuff like, okay, so like, what am I doing with what I'm learning? Because, the whole point of education is to be absorbing information that can help me live a life. And I got all these grades. I got all of these accolades. I got these little awards and these little chords that you can do. I really don't even have them anymore because they just weren't important to me. But, you get all these things and it's just like, but my life doesn't reflect that I know what the hell I'm doing. Like I just sat here and thought mermaids were like legitimately real. I just thought I watched a realistic documentary without seeing one source. I ain't even try to follow a rabbit hole, just saw it on the screen. They said it. I was like, yes, this is true. Bruh, that's a problem. So that's how I got fascinated with learning because also at the time I was what 586 pounds too. And I'm like, ooh, like all of that learning ain't helped you with this weight problem, bruh. And that was a real thing for me at one point because like when I was a big boy, I was trying my hardest to lose weight, man. I was going to the gym like at 3:00 in the morning and like working out like real hard. You know what I'm saying? I mean, not too hard, but like real hard, working out and all that. And then, I mean, it probably didn't help that like right afterwards, I would go to like Crystal's and get like them burgers and a shake or so. Cause I feel like I've earned it. And then go to sleep and then get back up. So, but anyway, so the point was I became fascinated with learning. So, and that's one of the things that kind of led to my weight loss was I had to start like thinking about, hey, why do I eat the way that I eat? Like, and I really became critical, not necessarily in a negative way. I mean, if you heard my internal voice, you were like, bro, you need to be nicer to yourself. But, like, I remember saying like, now, dude, you know it's okay to call that greedy, right? Because greedy is what it is. At this moment, you are licking the plate, and like this is greedy. I became very critical of myself. And it wasn't to, call myself names or anything like that. It was just trying to explore why I did anything. Like what's the why behind this? How did I get here? And so that became a fascination for me. And then that evolved to from like a systems perspective of how we learn. So the more I begin to challenge how I learn and questions that I'm not asking myself, I say, oh man, how do we learn? How do we get these little information things? And so at first I was approaching it from systems perspective, thinking like tools, curriculum, conversation models, and definitely more exploring more adaptive learning frameworks. For about 3 years, my wife and I ran a homeschool group out of our house. Because we were really passionate about education and like learning and stuff. And then like right before I decided to start sharing sharing my story on the channel about me being a Black person who does not believe in any superstition, like none of it. Like I just don't have a need to. And it's like, but you don't believe in ghosts? Like what reason what necessity do I need to believe in a ghost? Like it's no utility for me. So, but right before I was doing that, education was what I was working on. I was running a mentorship group. I was climbing the ranks in my little career thing, and I started working on this educational framework that we called Mastermind. And that's why you see Mastermind in a lot of my branding and stuff today. And she's working on this, and it was in a business meeting for that particular project that I was working on that I decided that I got to start telling my story. Like, and it's weird. Like it was in a business meeting for Mastermind where I realized like I could no longer float in this world of, is Darante Christian? Is it possible that he'll ever be a Christian again? I had to make it clear that no, this is who I am. This is not a trend. As a matter of fact, I'm about to get to work. I had to make it clear. So oh man, I hope like this ain't even this. We're gonna get the bias. I'm just talking about how we got here. I had to make it clear that I was never going back to that person, because what I realized in that meeting was that I had robbed myself like a decade of being around people who really get me. And if you go back to my introductory stories, you go back to Brady Goodwin's channel, Ichabod. You go back to Harmonic Atheist channel. You'll see that me telling that in my story. Oh, okay. And so because in that meeting, the person like wanted to bless it in the name of Jesus, and I was like, now, God damn it, is this what I'm gonna have to do in everything? And it's also realizing like, man, no, because you've lived as an atheist in the closet, like everybody around you expects you to continue to do so. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is like you could have been talking to people who know who you are and are okay who you are and building real relationships. And instead, you've been tolerating these damn near parasocial, not real relationships. And it's like, oh no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that anymore. Right. So I was fascinated with learning, working on that learning app. And that's when I decided to come here. But I did not stop working on trying to understand more about like, how do we learn? And then because of the research that I've had to do for our Sunday sessions, and then even some of the research that I've had to do for some of my Monday through Friday content, especially when we're talking about the psychological implications that religion often has on us when exploring doctrine, and my kind of focus when exploring that is not just when one person thinks something for a few years in their lives, but when people generationally inherit a way of thinking. Okay, like those are the implications that I like to focus on, that I like to study. Not saying that any other area is not legitimate, but I think that's one of the things that that often resonates with people is I'm looking for those social implications and those psychological implications. What we used to call in the Christian world generational curses. You know what I'm saying? So I like to study things from a long view. But then because of the work I'm doing with our Sunday session stuff, and I remember like we did and these are old. This is back when Darnell was doing them with me. These are old. Like we did one called Mind Change, one called How to Human, and then another called Trust Issues. And all of those we were man floating around a lot of cognitive development area. And there was like a lot of light bulbs hitting me during those series. So I was going back to the work, and I'm taking this somewhere. I'm gonna tell you what this got to do with bias in just a minute. And so like light bulbs are going off, and I'm like, okay, I think I can see some things that are already based off some other things. So I get fascinated then with how we learn on an individual cognitive level. So it's how do people learn? How do people as individuals learn? How do people form beliefs? And I've talked about some of this, talked about this before with y'all, but today I kind of want to show it to you a little bit before we jump in our conversation. And let me see here. I want to do this. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good. And I'm gonna have to biggie size this. So I'm gonna come back to the chat in a few. I know I've been rambling for a moment. I will come back to the chat in a few, but I wanted to show y'all this because this is the model that I've been working on. It's just kind of like a little framework of understanding how ideas form, how thoughts form, regardless of whether they're right or wrong, regardless of whether they're factual or not, is not what this model necessarily is tracking or attempting to explain. It's how ideas form, and that was really the initial phase, is just how ideas form. Like how do people form? It wasn't even beliefs yet. It was just ideas. Like and ultimately, again, not judging the truthiness or falsiness of the idea. It's the confidence. How does the person? Because many times one of the biggest distinctions in public education is many children don't have the confidence that they can learn. And so I became really interested in, I wonder what has contributed to that lack of confidence, right? And so then it becomes, so the thing that I was working for is looking for, how do ideas form that we're confident in, where we feel like, oh, I know enough about this type of thing. And so this model, it's like, this is like the fusion phase, and this is just me trying to simplify it as much as I can. And that's like, hey, you just started thinking about something, maybe this new idea came in or this new information came in, you're thinking, and you'll notice these things. I know y'all can't see me pointing, but you're looking at the screen. So you'll notice, if you look closely, some of those things have formed pairs, fusion. That means these thoughts found enough in common that they were like, yeah, I think something's there. I think there's something there. And then as that continued to happen, they develop gravity. I'm clicking on the wrong screen. They develop gravity. All right. And if you see that, you got the little gravity. And that means now they're not just pairing up, but they're developing a gravitational pull. They're developing that, because they're attracting more ideas that they have resonance in, and that's that measurement. That's what ultimately leads to the confidence. They pull more in, and we're just going to let it float for a little bit, and while I kind of explain it. And so my visualization of this was, the more information that a person has on a subject, that that resonates with information that already exists in there, the more likely they're going to have more confidence. But if information is being introduced that is foreign to anything that already exists in the knowledge base, it's going to be less likely to find a connection. And so, like here, if you notice in this, you have the little orange ball all the way out there in left field, in my view. You got a little orange ball all the way out there. You got another little blue ball. I couldn't avoid it. It is blue. I guess I could have said teal. And it's likely that there could be something that is connected with, but it's so far out the game, it's so foreign that it's just not finding anything. But if you'll notice, other areas are getting bigger and bigger because they're closer to the center of thought, which means these things are actively kind of being thought upon. They're actively kind of being fed, regardless of whether they're true or regardless of whether they're factual. It's just the information is finding more resonance as it's gaining more gravity. And of course, all of this is kind of based off of a bias. Like in learning, there is a bias loop that has to be accounted for. All right. And so then, as I said, we started. Oh, I could have been using my mouse, y'all. I didn't think about that. I remember that. But this was the orange one I was talking about out here, you know. All right, so now we're going to go to the next phase, because it was, I think, it was 2024, where we were doing the Mind Change Sunday session series, where how people change their minds started getting really fascinating to me. So I'm like, oh, yeah, how does mind change work? And this kind of demonstrates the first level of mind change. We have two options, and the first one is time decay. And time decay works like, the less I think about that particular idea in its correlation with the other things it found resonance with, the less likely I am to continue to hold that idea. And so then you get kind of like knowledge breakdown, idea breakdown. I can no longer hold that to be true, and that's internally true, not necessarily factually true, but I can no longer hold this to be coherent, and that's kind of leads to the breakdown. Now, that's the first way. That's I'm wrong mouse again. Now, let me just kind of reset here so I can show the second way that you do all that, get you some gravity back. Bam. Now, the other point of mind change is cognitive repulsion, and let's look at what it does. Boom. Which means something happens. Sometimes we call it kind of like a crisis of faith. Something happens where two major thoughts that you had are now in contrast. So I've always explained it. For me, it was like God is love, and love had a database in my mind, had a data network, and God had a data network in my mind. And they were like merged galaxies, like Andromeda and the Milky Way are going to be in a long time from now. These merged galaxies. But then once I realized that no, I cannot reconcile my evolving understanding of love with my evolving understanding of God, as not only as presented in the text, but as demonstrated in reality historically. I cannot reconcile those two things. That's an experience, cognitive dissonance, of that repulsion. And so now all of those ideas have been disbarred, almost exploding, and now they're back in free for all, looking for new places to find, unless they're completely discarded. And so that was kind of, I said all that to say, that's how I came to this conversation to talk about bias, because the more that I'm learning about the way we learn, I'm starting to realize that we're all kind of biased by default. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Now, since I've been talking so much, I am going to come over to the chat before we actually jump into this. Yes. All right. Neurotypical learning. Ben, just being had to throw that little visual in there. Thank y'all. Man, giving my energy to who would be most upset instead of who meant the most to me. That is so good. That could be a whole book, man. Like I can see that being a novel. Yes, we mean what you know. I love y'all. All right, so let's jump into this. So that's how we get here, is that I'm realizing that bias, and this doesn't necessarily come from me observing anybody else, even though I'm constantly observing everybody else. I'm sorry, but it's like me, like it's me observing me and tracking my own biases. And it's so funny because I know I be aggravating my kids and my wife with it all the time. And because I'm just always watching things go out. Like I think we were at a graduation and somebody sneezed, and the person in front of them kind of like ugh. And my first thought was, I wonder if they're doing that because that person was black, you know? And then I challenged myself to rerun the scenario with a different minority, you know? And it's like, would I have that same thought? And it's like, probably, yeah. And it's like, so the bias, like, I'm not saying that they're not doing it because they're black. I don't have enough information to get there. And ultimately, that's what I'm saying, is that the bias is depending on a shortcut. You know what I'm saying? It's depending on the shortcut. So what I realize is that bias is not primarily a character defect. Bias is a cognitive efficiency system, because that's what I kind of begin to realize, is that the brain, the way our biases work is because our brain is trying to conserve energy. Like it goes for the laziest thought because it's easy. The mind says, you know what, I know enough information about this incoming thing that we'll just categorize it over here. And so bias kind of works as energy preservation. It's your mind trying not to work too hard to preserve as much energy as it can, because it can't treat every piece of information as brand new, because that would be exhausting. And so, like, and that's just kind of a fascinating evolutionary aspect to. Okay, I'm gonna try not to nerd out, but like, think about that. Like, it can't treat every piece of information as brand new, like, because like some of the information is going to be incredibly repetitive. Like, you don't want to be shocked that your grass is green every day. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be shocked. It's green. This is new information. I must process this deeply. Not every day. You're not going to get anything done. If you can't get past the driveway, you're not going to be able to get anything done. So the brain has the mind, whatever, has learned or done this amazing thing to say, nah, we're going to categorize information, and we see this enough to know where this belongs. You know, we see this enough to know where this belongs, and we can see that even in evolutionary survival. It's like, after a while, sure, the first few times ever in human history, you hear rustling in the trees and you don't run, hey, it happens. But after you done heard the rustle in the trees, 5 different times, and there are 5 different bodies, at this moment, it should be general understanding. If you hear rustle in the trees, you run. Otherwise, we don't get here. The mind learns how to say, no, we've heard this before. You know what I'm saying? No, the mind says, I've seen this movie before. Like, and that, like, I love the fact that my neurospicy threw it out like that. No, yeah, I've seen this movie before, because we do that. Like that's one of the thoughts for at least me. I'm not going to speak for y'all. I'm going to speak for me. I try my best not to speak for everybody else. But for me, I not be like, no, I've seen this movie before. Oh, no, I've seen this. No, I know exactly what this is, And I'm not saying, watch this, please don't get me wrong. I am not saying that it's not right. I'm suggesting that it's not examined. Okay. All right. So what we know is the human brain, the mind cannot treat every piece of information as brand new. So it categorizes information in a way to preserve energy. And so this is, and like, this isn't automatically irrational, right? It's in many cases, it's necessary. And that's why I said, again, if we didn't develop this early on in our species, like, we'd be dead. We'd be dead. If every time the tree rattled, we have to investigate, we'd be dead. No, we wouldn't have survived. The cheetah barely survived, right? The cheetah got down to where there was just one pregnant mama left. Now that's a movie. Don't let Tyler Perry write it. Let me stop. All right. So like, now, without these, and because that's what biases are, without these cognitive shortcuts, we'd barely be able to function. You wouldn't be able to drive. You wouldn't be able to read facial expressions, make quick decisions, recognize danger, like none of that. And so bias in itself is not bias in itself is not the enemy of thinking. Okay. Unexamined bias is the enemy of thinking. And because I I want people to normalize knowing that they have biases. I want it to be safe for people to admit that they are biased. I want people to understand that bias is likely the default. It is likely the default because it has been evolutionary advantageous. Unexamined bias in an educated world, unexamined bias in an informed society is the enemy of thinking. You know what I'm saying? Unexamined bias in an informed society is the enemy of thinking. Now, so I want to, in my framework, I kind of understand bias as a gravitational pull. So incoming information does not enter the mind in a neutral, empty space. You know, again, just kind of going back to the image on the board, you see things are still floating around. So all of that stuff that could be representative of your mind right now. That could be representative of your mind just at a solid thinking state, you know, not thinking too hard, you know what I'm saying? Just kind of enjoying the low baritones, you know what I'm saying? Not thinking too hard, but you still got you got some nodes moving around. There's some things moving around, and then new information is coming in to that space. And that new information as it's coming in, as it is coming in, it's going to be pulled into the gravity of something, right? And so whichever thing has the most resonance with it, it's going to be pulled into the gravity of that. And so, and what that represents is that mass that's pulling, that's creating that gravity, that's existing beliefs, that's your emotional investments, that's your identity commitments. Like that was one that I had to work through, my identity commitments, you know, like, oh no, like, because like, you know, hey, Black nationalist tendencies right here, Pan-African for sure, humanist, that's where I ended up reigning supreme. But I also realized I live in a complexity world, with a complex world where people want nations, and I'm like, all right, I want one too. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, no, so I had to fight through my identity commitments. No, as soon as people realized that I was leaving Christianity, it was like, oh no, the next natural order for me, he's gonna go to the Nation of Islam, you know? And I was like, nah, I'm kind of good on that. Okay, well, if he ain't gonna do Nation of Islam, he's gonna do the Hebrew Israelites. And I'm like, oh, I'm definitely good on that. I'm not gonna do that. And then, well, if he's not gonna do the Hebrew Israelites, he's gonna do the Moorish Nuwapians. And I'm like, this is getting stranger and stranger, you know? And those are identity commitments that I had to wrestle with. I had to go through a whole community. It was like dang, you had to go through like all the bosses. You got to go through all the bosses of Black identity, you know? It's like, dang. And then you get to the top, you get your Black card, you know? I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. It was right there. Kobe. All right, I'm sorry. But you know, that pre-existing mass, it can be trauma responses. It can be group loyalties. It can be repeated narratives. It can be social conditioning, which I don't think we wrestle with how much of our beliefs are the product of social conditioning. You know, I don't know. I don't know if we really wrestle with it. Like how much of our beliefs is not even based on things we've ever examined, on things that we've ever processed, but things that we inherited, things that we absorbed, things that we felt like we had no, things that we complied to, things that we submitted to, things that we subjugated ourselves to, casting every thought, taking every thought captive and all that jazz, you know, every vain imagination. I'm so glad I'm forgetting scripture. That feels so good. That feels so good. But no, how much of our thoughts are not the product. And again, me sitting in front of that TV coming to realize that, hey, dude, you believe bullshit and you need to change that. That led me on a journey of saying how much of what I believe is actually based on anything that's properly examined. And most of the stuff that makes it in unexamined are the things that are getting in through the lens of our bias, because that gravitational pulls it in, and we just like, all right, it got to pass. We don't have to check its ID. Dang, this is so good, man. Like, oh my goodness. Like, it's that stuff we just let in and we didn't examine to go back and say, oh no, that's actually not the way I feel about that. Okay. So much of that is social conditioning. Many of us were socially conditioned to believe in Santa Claus. It wasn't even just your parents. I mean, some of your parents probably went a little overboard. I don't know you like that. But in most cases, or in many cases, shall I say, it wasn't just your parents. It was on TV. It was on the radio. When you was at school, you were going to be painting Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Your teachers were going to be asking you to write all the lists to Santa Claus. Y'all were going to be watching Santa stuff. Y'all was going to have a Santa party. Y'all was going to do a Christmas party. It wasn't just your parents. You know, your city was going to light up, do the lights, and they were going to have Christmas trees, and they were going to have little candy cane men people and the nutcrackers, which is like the weirdest story ever. And they're going to have all of them, you know, plopped up around. It wasn't just your family. These are social conditioning. But once you realize, like, again, let me show this model if it's still going. Once you realize the more that stuff sits up there, then it's not just Santa. You can lose the Santa, but then it's like, no, but I still believe in magic. And I'm not saying you shouldn't believe in the magic of the season. I'm saying, but there are people who cannot separate their social conditioning for Santa to the same engine that socially conditioned them towards, you know, towards dang it, what was the example I just used? Towards something, towards charity. It's social conditioning. The same thing that socially conditioned you towards Santa is socially conditioning you to what family looks like and what family doesn't look like. It's the same engine, same mechanism. And so those things, they get a little power play. They become a whole little solar system in your mind of thought. And that's how in a country like the United States of America, Santa somehow gets equated to white American values. So much so that white America had a fit when they found out that there were black Santas out there. Now, why are they doing that? And that's just a step too far. Why? Because that thought exists in that same gravitational pull of another thought. You know, that's social conditioning. So yeah, it's the Santa Christ, the Jesus Claus. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, it's all connected. It's all connected. Now, again, I am not saying that to say in any measure that you shouldn't celebrate the seasons. Number one, hey, player, you grown. You do whatever the hell you want to do. You know what I'm saying? We can all play pretend. I ain't got no problem with anybody playing pretend. I love Christmas carols. I love the ones about, you know, the Rudolph dude. Those are kind of nice. I mean, they're not. There are songs about bullying and then only becoming valuable when your mutation is useful. And it's just like, I don't think we're teaching the right lessons in these stories. But, you know, I'll have a blue Christmas. I'll have a blue Christmas. I'm going to listen to the whole Temptations Christmas album, starting with In My Mind. No, I'm going there. Yeah. That's a Silent Night. But I don't have to worry about, at least at this junction, I don't have to worry about the Santanians, you know, changing laws and shit like that. So I can still enjoy that. So I'm not saying anybody has to throw away Christmas. I don't care what holidays you do. Like, honestly, I think that's a pedantic battle. The people who be like, oh, you shouldn't do this. I'd be like, hey, chill. You know, I mean, you do what you want to do. Like you make them cookies and milk. And if you're going to dress up as Santa, do it. Just don't get stuck in the chimney. They don't work anymore. Now I'm stopped. All right. So the big point is there's so many of our identity in the realm of our ideas that are shaped by so many outside factors by the time we're even determining what we like and what we don't like, that most of us are literally full grown people operating on inherited scripts because we've not learned how to start writing our own stories. And that's where those bias comes in. And that's why, like, sometimes, okay, and I'm gonna make it real for you. Oh, dang it. Almost said, like, sometimes when you're arguing with people, you can tell when someone is so steeped in their bias because it feels like you're arguing with a bot. You don't even feel like you're arguing with a person anymore. Why? Because every argument you're putting in there is getting deflected by their bias ecosystem. You know? Now, I don't share this. I don't share this type of information to say, like, oh, so now you go tell them that's your bias thing and you need to stop it. Because what I'm saying is, like, hey, that's not going to work. That's not going to work at all. You know? Oh man. J Dubs was born as hell. Yeah, I heard. Yeah, y'all couldn't do nothing. Y'all couldn't do nothing, man. Just no Halloween. Like, I grew up with some J Dubs on one of the streets that I lived on. And actually they ended up being members of my church years later. Like, probably about 30 to 40% of my congregation were former J Dubs at one point. They were all the same family, and it was a big old family. But yeah, so the big point is that yes, it is very mindful not to feed into it. So when new information comes in, it doesn't really just float freely until reason evaluates it. It gets pulled. It doesn't come into this neutral space. And I think that's something we all have to be mindful of. This isn't about us finding ways to criticize others. It's really about us finding ways to understand ourselves. And by understanding ourselves and by looking for spaces that help us understand ourselves, we create opportunity for others to do the same in a non-defensive posture. You got to think smarter, not harder. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's not, bruh. Oh my goodness. I think that's what I'm going to name the book to present the Kia thing. It's going to be called Think Smarter, Not Harder. You ever seen people try to like, you're not going to super Saiyan your way to a better understanding. That is not, next time in general physics. No, it's not happening. You got to think smarter, not harder. I like that. That was like a whole little commercial break. All right, back to regularly scheduled programming. Okay. So some information gets pulled into the orbit around what we already believe. Some information gets bent until it appears to support what we already think. And some information gets rejected before it ever gets a fair hearing because it threatens the stability of the current system. And that stability on the outside can look like a lot of things. And most of those things that it looks like are not attractive. Most of those things that it looks like are not comfortable. And many of those things that it looks like are absolutely harmful. All right. But it is on the outside, that's what it is. On the inside, it is the mind trying to preserve energy. It is literally the brain seeing some information coming in and like, ain't nobody got time for that. I don't have the time to break everything down. That's what the mind is doing. And so, and again, In the African savannah, this was necessary for survival. But our sociological evolution has given us the gift of time, and we need to learn how to manage it better. Damn, I am preaching. I don't care. I am. That's good. No, our sociological evolution has given us the gift of time. We do now have the convenience of, dare I say, the luxury of time. So much so. Remember, this thing kind of develops with like, hey, something in the bush, get the fuck on, you know. But like, if I just step outside right now, something in the bush, I got time to think about it. I have options. Okay. Like we've given ourselves the gift of time. We have time to think about it. So now we need to manage that time and how we think. That's the next episode, in the words of Dr. Dre. Okay. No, thinking fast got you here, but it will not get us there. Like, we're gonna stay stuck here. Now, we've given ourselves the gift, why not use it? We have the gift of time to think, use the gift of time to think. Before I rush to make this instinctual, primal, if you will, decision or the primal judgment, let me find ways to start. Here it is. If I know my primal default is going to be to bias based off of my evolutionary survival mechanics, then a part of my upgrade now should be instituting a systemic audit system of my thoughts to start checking for those biases, to start checking where they're getting out of order. And I think that, like, these are the conversations. I don't know. Y'all might hate me for this conversation. I don't know. But these are the conversations that I want to hear more of, holding us all accountable and creating the space for us to think about it. Like, I don't know. I got a lot of biases. And that's why I share so much in my own stories, let you know, like, nah, like, I have to check my biases with my kids all the time. All the time. Like, Darante, where did that come from? I started doing this when I used to work with people in counseling and consulting. And y'all have heard me talk about this. This ain't nothing new. To like, hey, when you go pour out all your likes and your dislikes, write them on the paper. I like this. There's as many of them as you can think. I like this. I don't like this. I don't care what it's about. Food, people, whatever. Write it all down with no judgment. You got to remove the voice of judgment from that internal character. Okay, you got to remove that to really do this exercise. And then you write just as much as you can. It can be as much or as little. It's up to you. But just as much as you can, you write it all down. And then you go through it one by one and ask yourself why. And you ask yourself why until you get to the root. And what many people begin to find is that a significant percentage of what they thought they liked and disliked was not based on any experience of their own or any desire of their own. They didn't even have a connection with the actual thought. It just exists as a bias, unchecked, unexamined, unevaluated, but harmful nonetheless. Man. So that's the I want us to understand that bias is a gravitational effect of thinking. Bias is a gravitational effect of thinking. It's a cognitive default. The mind is trying to preserve energy. It is trying to help you manage your time. But you now have the time to manage your time. And so since we've given ourselves that gift of time, shouldn't we use it in making sure that we are constantly challenging our biases, not just when they become uncomfortable? Let's not wait to the moment of cognitive dissonance. Let's be checking as it's coming in. Let's give ourselves the space to check the time. Now, you got time to think about that. Okay. This is just me. This is me. And so, like, a currently held idea can become so massive in the mind that it bends the path of every new information piece around it, every new piece of information around it. And that becomes that's what makes bias so hard to detect for some people in themselves, because that mass of information that bias is connected to is so large, it makes up a significant part of not just your worldview, but how you belong in the world. It isn't just how you view the world, it's how you belong in the world. And so that gravitational pull now is designed to make sure that you can continue existing at that state. This is why two people can look at the same evidence and walk away with completely different conclusions. You could be sitting in the same debate. Two people listen to Ken Ham, I think, yeah, and Bill Nye. Some of them came out of there like, man, the science is on point. And somebody else came out and said, God is not defeated. You know, because they're not just they're not just processing the evidence. They're not just processing the information. They're processing the evidence inside different gravitational fields. So if in your mind you've built up this beautiful network of thinking critically and challenging claims, then that's going to take up a big portion. And it's going to be really easy for it to have a gravitational pull. But in a mind that does not have that, and instead has a mind of interpretation through revelation, understanding through magic, intelligence through theater, then that person is going to come and say, look, God did his thing again. You know, that's right. Like, that's like, right. I'm biased towards the scientists. And so when I come in, when I'm listening, I have to say, let me examine it. And do I believe that just because my side said it, or have I actually evaluated it to determine whether it's accurate? You know, and we've seen this. Like, I've seen this so much, which, just to be quite honest, I called it out like 2 years ago in a video I did called Leapfrogging and something else. It was leapfrogging and something else. It was a political video. Y'all did not like it, but I did it anyway. Cause I'm like, oh, we got some problems here. And that leapfrogging, man, and it gets you so focused on things that you're so far away from that it makes you easier to deceive. And so, like, at one point, I don't know if it stopped or not, but people were just sharing a bunch of false stories just because they matched the narrative that we already kind of believed to be true. But then at that moment, we stop fact checking and we're just sharing stuff that in many times has been absolutely created just to further the rage culture. And we're just feeding right into it. Like, dance, puppets. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be that. But that's somebody understanding that people are going to be clicking based off of their biases. They're not going to be checking. They're going to be sharing just because this thing already exists in a gravitational space in their mind. And as long as this is the hot thing that's taken up, they are more likely to not only engage it, but share it with others, to hell be with if it's true or not. And then that's what makes hypocrites of us all, you know. But I think I personally think we should be living as if we're all capable of being hypocrites. Now that we understand that sin is not the issue, okay, then we should not be too far downstream from realizing that, okay, it's not just evil and good then either. We kind of got to break away from these false binaries and actually sit in the discomfort of complexity. Okay. And it's not just to make you, the idea is not just to get you to give other people grace. I mean, that would be nice, but the idea is to get you to be able to give yourself grace so that you become a safer person for people. Because if you don't give yourself the grace to check your bias, you're never going to give yourself the courage to manage them. I'm gonna say it again. Like if you don't give yourself the grace, like to check your bias, like, am I being biased here? Then you're never gonna give yourself the courage to manage them. If you're too afraid to say I'm biased, if you're too afraid to say it, then you're not gonna take that extra step and be like, "Ooh, so what does that mean? What do I need to do? What do I need to do?" You know? And so a small belief may slightly influence how we interpret new information, but a major belief may organize a whole area of thought in our lives. And that's sometimes that resistance pull that you're dealing with when you're talking to someone who lives in their bubble of bias and you're living in your bubble of bias. And again, the idea is not that all bias is bad. It's understanding that bias is the default, but it still needs to be checked. Your bias exists to protect you, but you have the responsibility and the time to check your biases. And so the more mass an idea holds, and that mass is determined by how many other ideas that it can collect in resonance to it and exist as a central framework of existence, that thing becomes like a black hole where information comes in and cannot help but to be drawn in. Again, two people looking at the same piece of evidence and come away with two completely different stories. And it's like, oh, the bias is, I always use the analogy of the blind man touching the elephant. The bias is part of what creates the blindness. And so this is why, like, religious people, when they hear religious critique or historical critique, they call it persecution. This is why political loyalists can reinterpret every scandal as strategy, every contradiction as nuance, and every failure as evidence of conspiracy. It feeds the bias that already exists. The social gravity has already trained them where to place certain information. And so the information gets captured before it gets examined. And I think that is too good to just scroll past. The information gets captured before it gets examined. No. The information gets captured before it gets examined. We experience it before we even have the time to evaluate it. And I like that. That's when like, okay, that's that. I just got a feeling, that gut. Yeah, that's experiencing it. But we still need to evaluate it. Still need to evaluate it. That's because that's what turns bias from a default to a choice. If you know how bias works, and at this moment, I think it behooves us all to know more about how cognitive development works. This is why I'm one of those people, like, and I've said it. I don't believe, I don't have a better word to use. I don't believe in this idea of changing other people's minds. I don't think that's how it works. I don't think that's how it works. And when I say that, because even when it looks like it works on the surface, where someone has kind of just like been dominated into submission, I don't think they actually changed their mind. They just changed their allegiance. It's still not an important thought to them. I think people change their own minds. And I think our greatest, I think, now this is just me. Nobody has to think this. I am simply a point of reference, not a voice of truth. I'm nobody's authority. But I think one of the greatest things that we can do is to be creating spaces that make it safe for people to change their mind. I mean, you don't got to name it like changing your mind safe space or nothing like that. But I'm saying like spaces that people can go to where they can be exposed to conversations like these in small groups, in lectures, in workshops, in seminars, and all focused on processing information, cognitive development, personal development, learning and growth, you know, and maybe, not doesn't necessarily need the anti-religious bit in it. It's just post-religious. It's like beyond it, you know. But I think we need spaces like that where people can actually just makes it safer. Where it's like I don't have to change my mind before I come in. That it's okay if I change my mind over time. But this space gives me access to conversations that make me think about things in a safe way that I wasn't able to do that before. And I'm able to do it, and I'm able to be in the room with other people and see how conversations impact them in real time, which then updates my database of, oh, there are people who feel differently about this than I do. See, these are the things where and if we want people to change their mind, we have to change the way we connect, we have to change the way we build, and we have to change the way we live. Oh, welcome to Bridge City. Did you see I just threw that in there? Like, no, we need spaces. That's kind of what Bridge City exists to be. Y'all ain't ready. Y'all ain't ready. So we often experience it before we even have the time to evaluate it. And that's not your fault, you know? Yes, it's the same reason why people tend to become more progressive when they go to college. They're confronted with a whole bunch of different people and perspectives in a neutral environment. It's safe. It's safe. Like I got to say so much stuff out loud in class, especially in my sociology classes, that I was never safe enough to say. Like that's how mind change works. And so bias, when you think about bias can lead to hatred, which I'm a person, I actually don't believe in hatred. I believe hatred is the mask that fear wears. Yeah, I don't believe in hatred. I believe hatred is the mask that fear wears. You know. And then that also makes perfect sense here, because then I can update what I was going to say. I was going to say bias is not always about hatred, but I can update to say that bias is about fear. Bias is about fear of wasted energy. You know? Bias is about the fear of wasted energy. I don't want to waste my time thinking about that. I don't want to waste my energy and then it turns out to be something that I already knew. Bias is about the fear of wasted investment. It's about the fear of wasted thought. That's why biases are so effective. Again, they're trying to conserve energy by not wasting energy on what we feel like we should have already known. That's why they're our default. It can lead, that deep fear can become a survival mechanism. And I think that's what leads to what we often call hatred. That's what leads to that deep hatred, because now these ideas have formed in such a way where anything that I see as a threat is threatening my very survival. Because all of that stuff is connected with familiarity, fear, convenience, social reward, and emotional self-protection. So a person may not be trying to protect a bad belief and still instinctively defend it because that belief is connected to their identity, relationships, income, community, or sense of safety. And again, I'll tell you, that's why sometimes you can be in conversations, especially when you're trying to do those tense conversations, which I don't even do those. When you're doing that, that's why it's like you're having two different conversations, because you are. You're having two different conversations. You're having two different standards of conversations. You've already on both sides, and I say both sides only so you would understand how they could get there by recognizing that you could be doing the same thing. Is that I have enough information on the subject. I have enough experience with the subject. I have enough time invested on the subject to not invest time with experimenting or accepting your framework of how to see it. I'm going to use my framework of how to see it because that works in my best energy of time conservation, of energy conservation. And you're going to do the same thing. You know, like, because in your mind, even if you say, well, okay, for the sake of the conversation, let's just say I do believe in magic. Because that actually don't exist in your mind, you don't even know what the hell that means. Because it's actually so foreign. And that's same. So like when a believer says, when an apologetic says, I hate them. No, not, I don't want to say hate. But no, like when apologetic says, I can't say the word right now. But when those folks, say, well, let's just say evolution was true. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't know what evolution is. Now, see, using their example, we can immediately know why we think they don't know what it is. We know that, but based off the way they talk about it, they've never actually studied it. They've only heard the apologetics version, never the actual science version. Because if they had understood it, it would have changed the gravitational pull of information in their minds. It would have created some of that cognitive repulsion. All righty. So I think understanding bias in this way helps us avoid two bad extremes. Like there's two bad extremes. One extreme says, if you're biased, you're a bad person. My problem with that is if everyone associates something that seems to be a natural byproduct of thinking that is occurring almost at all times, if that's immediately associated with the extreme negative connotation, then people are going to take less responsibility for their biases, not more. You know what I'm saying? Like when you sneeze, nobody thinks it's a shame. So people are more likely to sneeze and say, ooh, forgive me, or whatever. I don't know what people say when they sneeze. But people are more likely to claim their sneeze than they are when they pass gas. Because one is highly attached to shame. So if you do that in public, you're trying to hide it. You're trying to hide it. And that's what some people are doing to their biases. They're trying to hide their biases. And it's like, no, that ain't gonna help nobody. No, you need to be checking that bad boy. Don't hide it. And again, biases are not by default negative. They can just be wrong. And that becomes the problem. When you begin to depend on your biases for your truth claims of how you interact with the reality around you, you're making yourself vulnerable to misinformation that already matches your worldview. Because it's not hard. I think we take for granted how much information we're inundated with now, especially like the millennials, like the millennials and Generation X, like the amount of information that we've transitioned through. Like I grew up at a time where a typewriter was like something fun to do, you know? Like I saw the transition of the computer. I remember when television was just like 32 channels, and it wasn't all 32 of them. It started at like 4, you know? Like now I remember no remote controls, and you had to turn the knobs on the TV. I remember the phones where you had to do the little rotary thing. And if you messed up on the number, you got to start that all over again. But like we went from, hey, here's like 15 channels to here's like, oh, now 150 plus channels. Now packaged with 350 channels, all the music screaming you want, and you got live sports, and you got pay-per-view, and bam, now Netflix, bam, now Hulu, bam, now social media, bam, now YouTube. And it's just like there's so much information that is out there that it's almost becoming like a graveyard of thought. It's where thoughts go to die in many cases. But there's so much information out there that people are being shaped by it, and it is so well distributed that people can be being shaped by entirely different ecosystems and not even knowing it. And that's what's framing these incredibly siloed ideas of what the world is supposed to be and how it's supposed to operate. So one extreme says bias means you're a bad person. The other extreme says, well, everyone has bias, so it doesn't matter. And that's just laziness and absolutely disregards everything. I mean, it just disregards the basic understanding of how we've evolved sociologically as a social species. It's laziness. It ignores how much we've gotten wrong. I think listen, I have no problem with our species patting ourselves on the backs for great things we've accomplished. We are humanity. Yay. I have no problems with that. But I think we also need to become much more attentive to what we've gotten wrong. And how efficiently we've gotten it wrong, how confidently we've gotten it wrong. I think we should be informed. We should be informed of, oh, how much this created a lot of harm. Let's do better. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in our own human exceptionalism that we're not really pushing for better. We're just pushing for more of the same without paying attention what the same is costing us. As I say when I'm trying to pretend like I'm an older person, it's like you got to learn your lessons. We got to learn the lessons. Understanding that bias is a default should not lead us to a place where people are able to avoid accountability for the specific harm that biases cause. What I'm saying is that bias is a given, but responsibility is a requirement. It is. Responsibility is still required. Bias is still your responsibility to manage. And this is what scares me. The moment people think they are beyond bias, that's where the danger happens. The moment people think they are beyond bias. Did you see how I just flipped this thing back? I just flipped it. No, this is not about people out there who are doing hateful stuff and trying to find a way to excuse them. This is about trying to find a way to explain how even when we know better, we still don't do better. Because it's like no matter how enlightened we ever think we are, no matter how well at critical thinking we ever think we have become, bias is still and will continue to be, until there is some type of cognitive breakthrough, will continue to be our individual responsibility to manage, and we should all be taking the time to manage it. Your bias is your responsibility. Your bias is your responsibility. One of my favorite questions to ask people is, what is your content diet? Like, what are you consuming? How much, like, do you have, listen, do you have a balanced content diet that is mindful of biases that may be forming? Have you ever thought about that? Like treating the information you consume like a diet, and like saying, rage bait and clickbait and like Love and Hip Hop Atlanta type of stuff. That's the snacks. Those are snacks. But I can't live off of that shit. They're tasty. They're fun. I like to lick them off my fingers, but I can't live off that shit. I need to make sure there's some steak and potatoes in my diet. Do you have some steak and potatoes in your content diet? Do you have some broccoli and some carrots? Some kale, maybe. I've never eaten kale. I'm in Alabama. I think we can buy it here, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid. But I'm like, what's in your content diet? I've been fascinated with learning for a while. So when some people want to tell me, they tell me like, I have a trouble understanding this, and I'm like, how often do you expose yourself to it at your level? Huh? No, how often do you expose yourself to it at your level? Like, cause you got like Khan Academy and stuff. You got Crash Course. Like, how often do you? I'm like, oh no, I don't do that. I just think about it sometimes. Yeah, but you're thinking about it, but you haven't put any new information in there to build up any mass. It's going to feel foreign to you until it finds some resonance. You got to give it enough information. You got to give it some more information, and you got to think about that information, and you got to keep giving it the information till some of that information starts connecting the dots. That's your content diet. Yes, you find yourself enraged every day or sad every day outside of any medical diagnosis. You find yourself upset just all the time. Check your content diet. Like what have I been watching lately? What have I been listening to lately? Content diet. I mean, like, I'm not saying this is some type of cure-all. I'm saying this is one of the many small steps you can take to be more to manage your time better on what you consume. These are ways you check your biases. Your bias is your responsibility. All right. So like, if you do just watch Fox News all day and nobody but Fox News, You're responsible for that Fox News bias. But I can take it deeper than that. If you've chosen to affirm what's true or not by fast food journalism, because that's what all of it is. All of it is fast food journalism. That's a part of your content diet. You up there eating a Big Mac with fries, calling it steak and shrimp. Mm-hmm. Ain't no chef back there. That's not how that works. It's your content diet. Our biases are directionally, our biases feel directionally proportional with the information that we consume, with the information that we ingest, with the information that we expose ourselves to. And so a part of being responsible for our biases is being responsible for the information that we consume. And watch this. If I'm not checking if I'm not checking the information, I'm probably not checking my biases. At that moment, I'm giving my biases free reign. Hey, you got it, bro. I'm not checking it. Not checking for accuracy. Good news sponsorship. I should have. You know, like I one of my friends he thought he was going to get into trading stocks for a while because there's this guy telling people that like all you got to do to trade stocks is this. And I'm like, you know, I kind of know your content diet though. And so I think you being scammed. Now, I don't know if he's scamming you or you scamming yourself. Maybe he's legitimate. I don't know. But I know you don't know enough about what you haven't fed yourself enough information about this particular area to actually have the informational confidence you need to make decisions. And of course, it didn't last. And of course, people think when I say stuff like that I'm just like, man, you just been. And I'm like, no, it's not even about you personally. It's just there's a high probability here. Like in order for it not, in my mind, and I'm not saying I'm Rain Man or nothing, but in my mind, I'd be like, when I say something like that, I'm saying the scenario where this works the way that you think it works, the probability of that happening is less than 2%. It's kind of like that in my mind. And I'm like, so now like it's real likely it's going to work the way I said. But that's all about biases. Bias doesn't just impact who you hate and who you love. Bias impacts what you're willing to believe and what you're not willing to believe. It's a predisposition. And in this case, it is a cognitive predisposition that my mind already has so much information on this subject that I feel like I have confidence in, regardless of the truthiness value of the information. I just feel confident enough in the information to shortcut the process when new information comes in, which means if it even feels like it has anything to do with this, it's going to be skewed towards what I already think. That's how bias works. Unless, all right, now, because we've already kind of interrupted how you can start helping yourself avoid bias. Bias. It's not I said bias. I think I did, but avoid bias. It still sounds that way. And that is by being a part of something that regularly, routinely puts you in connection with other people in a neutral environment where you can explore thoughts about cognitive development, personal development, community development, growth, transformation, life, and all of those beautiful, wonderful things where you can talk to somebody about transcendence and what you think about those things in a neutral space. This is the perfect membrane for bias checking. But to build that ecosystem requires commitment to diversity and diversity of thought. It requires commitment to sitting with the discomfort of complexity. And if you're part of Bridge City, you especially in our trigger warnings, we don't run from complexity. We have people say things in those trigger warnings that I know other people are like, what? That's what you think? And it's like, yeah, this is what we need. This has to be in the room. Everything other than harm. Let's go. Let's be exposed to what this world actually looks like, to the other thoughts that people have. You know, you have to create a space for diversity of thought. That's where the safety is. That's where the freedom is. And that's also where the experience comes for them to get that information of the look on somebody else's face. And for it not just to be one or two, but they're looking at a whole Zoom room, or in the case when we actually have physical locations, they're looking at a whole group room or a whole auditorium room of other people who are like, flabbergasted. That moment, that experience is information. Everybody need it. So just like having blind spots while driving doesn't make you evil, refusing to check your blind spot before changing lanes makes you dangerous. And I know. I hope this is helping people see, like, not just the importance of checking our biases, but I hope you realize how important it is to have spaces where you can do so safely. Because again, your biases are not just about the things that you love and you hate. It's not just about the things that you respect and disrespect. Man, our biases impact so many of our decisions. So many of our decisions. Our biases, man, like, oof. Like when I deconverted, what I wanted to do was think better. That was my commitment. Like, I want to make sure that while I have the good use of my brain, while I have the good use of my mind, I want to use it as effectively as I can. If this mind can help me make better decisions, then I want to put it in position to do so. You know? Like, I had biases about eating that shaped my thoughts about eating. Like, no, y'all got to eat this way because I'm black, you know, which is just ridiculous. Not all black people eat alike. No, I had so many biases that impacted my watch. This is one that's going to throw you for a loop. I had biases that impacted what I saw as exercise. So in my mind, and this is man, this is kind of how I lost the weight now, 586 to under 200. Hey. And been staying that way for like more than 5 years now. Doing the dang thing. But a part of that was like realizing, dang it, I don't even know where I was going with that. I was going somewhere. I think that rabbit is gone. We'll see. Yep, it's gone. No, maybe not. A part of that was realizing that I can check my biases and actually ask myself, why do I think this way? It's not hard. Why do I do this? Why do I think that only this qualifies as exercising? See, it came back. Why do I think that only this? So, no, you got to be sweating really hard or it's not exercising. And I'm gonna tell you the problem that's a bias you wouldn't even thought of. Let me tell you the problem that bias created for me. Because I had this bias that if I'm not straining and sweating, it doesn't cost exercise. It's not real exercise. Then the only exercising options I was willing to consider were exercise options that were more likely to put more strain on my body, wear me out sooner, and leave me being more demoralized. Now, once I was able to unpack that and think through that critically, I was able to realize, dude, the answer is simple. At 586 pounds, you don't need to be on nobody's treadmill. that is a risk to your heart. You don't need to be jogging down nobody's streets. You is killing your knees. Okay? And you ain't led a good life where you got like good time left on your knees. Don't be playing them games. Otherwise, no, I'm going to step in place. Because at first it's like, I'm going to walk around the neighborhood every day. And it's like, hey, bro, you don't like people looking at you like that. You don't like compliments. Oh, I see you still out here doing it. Yeah, I'm still out here. Your neighborhood wasn't safe. I'm gonna do my steps right here on my porch. You know, and that's what I did. Every time I go outside, I do steps. And then I said, I drink a lot of, at that time I used to drink a lot of sodas, Kool-Aids, juices, teas, like all of that. I was just drinking all day. And then I was like, hey, dude, that's a lot of calories that you don't even really need. And so if you're thirsty, just drink water. But I was giving myself information that started with being willing to challenge my bias. Once I became willing to challenge these bias, and I'm using this small bias because it's a safe one to use for everybody to realize, like, no, these things are more than in just the things we think about religion. They're more than just in the things that we think about race or gender. They're more than the things that we think about sexuality. These things are at play in all parts of our life, you know? And the more we can challenge them, the more we can find something that works better for us. Because one of the biggest tragedies of living in those inherited biases is that you start living by stuff that doesn't even work for you. You know? You ever seen somebody that been like on Jenny Craig for like 15 years claiming that it worked and it ain't never worked? That's the same type of bias that keeps someone stuck in religion. I have enough information that already exists that can skew any incoming information any way that it needs to stay in that, to stay in that cluster of thought, because that bad boy has grown big enough to be a black hole where once it's in there, nothing exists escaping it. Man. Wow. Prozac. That's mind blowing. So I'm going to end with this. Bias is not merely a personality flaw. It's a cognitive sequence of energy preservation. The brain saves effort by filtering new information through existing beliefs, memories, identities, and emotional commitments. Those commitments create a kind of gravitational field around incoming information, pulling it into orbit around what we already think we know. Sometimes before we have honestly examined it, we've experienced it. That means bias should not be treated as an occasional failure of bad people, but as a constant condition of human cognition that must be actively checked, corrected, and accounted for, which means we need to learn how to develop a language. In my humble opinion, we need to learn how to develop a language for saying, oh, am I tripping? Because that's what I do. That's my language. My language is, am I tripping? Am I looking at this the wrong way? I like to present things to other people who have different life experiences than me, because I know that the way that I view the world is going to be shaped by my lived experience. And I also know that the way other people view the world is going to be shaped by theirs, which keeps me mindful. See, the end of the day is like, there's no easy pathway to truth. And in many cases, there's not a guaranteed pathway to objective truth by any sense of the word. And so we're using everything we have to get as close to accurate as possible, recognizing the limitations where they exist, and then utilizing the tools, resources, knowledges, information, and understanding where they exist. And I think knowing that biases are a cognitive default in the system, that our minds are trying to conserve energy by not wasting time on every new piece of information, I think we have to find ways to be willing to say, well, I know that I'm vulnerable to this. So let me make sure, especially when it's something that's impacting my life, the people I love lives, or anybody else's life, if it creates any time, like, let me check. Before I jump there, let me check my biases. Does that make sense? Next time you hear you remember what they used to say, some things are too good to be true? That's a perfect example of how our bias, why is it too good to be true? Because something up there just knows that this person is ringing all the right bells because it's hitting the bias. These are the things that I want. You're saying all the nice things. And my bias is so, and it's not that I'm not saying that the adage is true. I'm saying the adage is a reminder to check your bias. Everything that glitters ain't gold. Check your bias. But no, that just feels true. Yeah, but that's not how we determine true. You might be right. You might be right. But you have the time to verify. That's what our growth has given us as a sociological species, as a social species. As we have evolved socially, we've given ourselves the gift of time to think about how we show up in the world and how much of what we're bringing to the table is informed, is examined, and is evaluated. And I'm just talking about personally. I'm not even talking about peer review stuff. I'm not talking about your research or anything like that. I'm talking about your ideas about the world that we live in. I'm talking about your ideas about other people. I'm talking about your ideas about other ideas. And again, I'm not saying something simple as in, like, all your biases aren't bad. Most of them exist to protect you. But you have to keep maintaining your security system. And if we now know that there is a flaw in our security system, it's a flaw, it's an efficiency flaw, then we have to manually be the audit process to say, okay, no, I know this is possible. I know that I very well could have not evaluated that with enough time and with enough thought. I very well know that I could just feel this way because I identify with this type of group. And that does not mean that I am off about this. That does not mean that. But it does mean I need to be more mindful of checking my bias. That's it. That's all I have for y'all today. I want to thank y'all for showing up on another beautiful Wednesday. Remember to join me back tomorrow evening. I'm doing a different kind of conversation. I'm talking to a young man who is he's still deconstructing. I don't think he's a non-believer. So he's still deconstructing, but he's also, I'm going to let him tell his story. I think it's going to be fascinating. And so y'all take a look. It'll be tomorrow night at noon. I love y'all. Thank y'all so much for being here. Hey, Kyle. Hey, Morning Saves the World. Captain. See, y'all see, you see how even with these big ass glasses, I still got to lean in and see. All right. I love y'all, man. Until next time, keep rising.
Don't sit around, please don't settle now, for we can do better now, we can get up, please don't don't sit around. Please don't settle down. We can do better now.